Hello everyone, my name is Josh Carr. I work at Camp Foster YMCA up here in Okoboji, northern part of Iowa. Hey, today I wanted to sit down and kind of chat with you about a few things, and one of those things happens to do with light. Obviously we're getting into that time of year where the days are getting a little bit longer, there's more light. We're coming out of a time that was pretty dark. Winter is a dark time, but there's some things to look for in the world that will bring light. What I have in front of me here, some of you have seen this, some of you have actually been in the ceremony on a campfire night in June, July, August at Camp Foster. This is one of our grad candles. One of our grad candles has the values beads on them. It's a nice white taper candle that gets lit off of the actual Foster flame. For those of you that don't know what the Foster flame is, it's a light that we all sit around every Friday evening, every evening in the summertime, as we warm our hands to it and we sing songs and we do the whole camp comes together, and it's a great coming together type opportunity. And so each one of our graduates get one of these things, and hopefully they can carry those with all their life. But what does a candle do? A candle by itself obviously can't send out of its own light. It's by itself really kind of a harmless thing, and it doesn't really do much. However, once you light it, it pushes darkness out away from things. And the story I'm going to read to you today, I want you to think about some of the things that push away the darkness. And right now, we could probably push away a little of the darkness. The story I'm going to read to you today is called The Lightlings. And it is a story written by Dr. R.C. Sproul. Wonderful book. It's an allegory, which means it doesn't have a meaning that's related to other things. So I'll go ahead and get started. I hope you enjoy it. One evening, in a house in a quiet neighborhood, a little boy was getting ready for bed. The boy's name was Charlie Cobb. As his mother was tucking him in, she covered him with blankets to make him warm and cozy. She knelt down beside the bed and prayed with him. Then she stood, leaned over, and kissed his forehead. Charlie looked up at his mom and said, "Mommy, please don't forget to turn on the light before you leave my room." Mrs. Cobb smiled at him and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll be sure to turn on the light. I won't leave you in the dark." So Charlie's mother gave him a kiss on the head again, finished tucking him in, and turned the light next to his bed. Just as she's ready to leave, Charlie said, "Mommy, why am I afraid of the dark?" She said, "That's a hard question to answer. Charlie, I think what we're going to do is wait for Grandpa. He's coming for dinner tomorrow. You can ask him then." "All right, Mommy," Charlie said. "I'll wait till tomorrow and ask Grandpa about it." The next day, just as Charlie's mother had promised, Grandpa came for dinner. Before they moved to the table, Charlie went and sat on Grandpa's knee and said, "Grandpa, may I ask you a question that's really bothering me?" Grandpa smiled and said, "Of course, Charlie. Tell me what it is you'd like to know." Charlie said, "Grandpa, why am I afraid of the dark? And why do so many people that I know seem to be afraid of the dark?" Grandpa looked at Charlie and said, "That's a very good question. But you know, not only are lots of people afraid of the dark, there are many that are afraid of the light." "Afraid of the light?" Charlie said. "Why would that be?" Grandpa said, "To understand that, I have to start at the beginning. In fact, at the very beginning." Charlie loved it when Grandpa told stories, so he curled up next to Grandpa and waited for him to begin. Grandpa started the story the way he always did. Once upon a time, there was a great king who was the king of light. He lived in the light, he made the light, and his light was so perfect and pure that he was called the King without a shadow. This great light of light made up a group of people, and he made them so they would shine brightly, just as he did. He called them the little lightlings. He set the lightling in a beautiful garden that he prepared for them, a garden that was full of bright sunshine. The sun bathed the garden every day and helped the flowers, plants, and fruits grow in a great abundance. The bright light of the sun helped keep everyone warm in the garden. The lightlings loved it when the king came to visit, especially at the end of the day. But one day, something terrible happened. The lightlings decided to do what they wanted to do instead of what their king wanted them to do. So they disobeyed the king and sinned against him. The very moment they sinned, their lights became dim, and they were filled with shame and great embarrassment. They ran as fast as they could to get away from the king. They didn't want the King of Light to see them. They ran out of the garden and into the woods and hid themselves in the darkest place they could. From then on, they were afraid of the light, because they knew that where the light was, the king would be, and the king would see them in their shame. After the lightlings left, the king began to remove his light from the garden. It soon became cold and covered with weeds, thorns, and sticky briars. The lightlings moved further and further into the woods until they lived in a place that was almost completely covered in darkness. It was so dark that they had to grope around as if they were blind, feeling their way through the forest. Often they would trip and fall, scuffing their knees and bruising themselves. It was awful living in the dreadful darkness all the time, where the only light they ever saw was in barely lit shadows that danced in the forest. In fact, they couldn't tell the difference anymore between night and day. Then one night, or perhaps it was day, far off in the distance they saw a blinding light shining through the trees. They could see the light coming from miles and miles away. They were frightened by it. They thought the light meant the king was coming to find them and punish them for their sins. So most of the lightlings began to stumble quickly away from the light. But some of the lightning children were so amazed by the light and curious about it that they decided to see from where it was coming. They set off and traveled for miles and miles. It took them a long time, but as they moved, they saw the light shining brighter and brighter. Finally, they came to a clearing in the forest. In the middle of the clearing, they saw a father lightning and a mother lightning and a baby who was shining like the sun. The blazing light seemed to be coming right out of the baby himself. The lightlings who saw it were shocked and surprised. They asked the father lightning, "Who is this baby? Where did he come from?" The father lightning answered, "He is not my son. He is the son of the King of Light. The king has given him to us as a special gift. He has been born for us. When he grows up, he will be called the light of the world. There will be no darkness strong enough to hide him. His light, no darkness deep enough to send his light away." When they heard this, the lightning children knelt down at the baby's feet and began to worship him in fear and in reverence. When they stood up again, their own faces were shining. But the light that was shining in their faces was not coming from inside them. It was a reflection of the light coming from the baby. The lightlings were now surrounded with the light of the child they had visited. They rushed back to their homes, their friends and their family as fast as they could. When they got home, they were still shining. Other lightlings were frightened at the sight of them and asked, "What happened to you?" So the little lightning children told their story. "We saw a baby who was shining with light. He is the son of the King of Light. The king has given to us a child, which was given to us, his own son, to be the light of the world." The lightlings noticed that already there was more light in the forest. Now they could begin to see where they were going. They could walk without falling. They could run and play without bumping into trees or rocks and getting bruised. Some still hid from the light, while others realized they didn't need to be afraid anymore. They saw that living in the light was much better than darkness that they were used to. Grandpa looked at Charlie and said, "You see, Charlie, we're afraid of the dark because we were made to live in the light. But someday, all of us who love this Son will live with him forever in heaven. When we go to the dwelling place of the Son, who is now the light of the world, there will be no more darkness at all. Not only that, there will be no moon, there won't be any stars or even a sun. There'll be no lights, no lamps, no lanterns, not even candles." Charlie asked, "How can it be light if there's no sun, lamps, or candles? How can that be?" His grandfather replied, in the place where the king's son now lives, the light that shines forever still comes from him, and he is the light in heaven. All who come into his presence will never be in darkness again. Wow, Charlie said. That's sure a wonderful thing to look forward to. And Grandpa replied, Charlie, let me make a suggestion. Every time you see the sun, the moon, or the stars, or light a candle, or turn on your nightlight, remember the story of the children of the light brought to you into the darkness out of this world. And remember that he gave us this baby as a present. As long as you remember that, you will never, ever have to be afraid of the dark again. That was The Lightlings by Dr. R.C. Sproul. As we look back at what I talked about earlier with the candle, the candle without the light is just a candle. And you and me, without the light, we're just what we are. We're dust. So remember that today, for others, for yourself. Make sure you spread the light to others. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.